Rupert Murdoch has built a media empire across the globe, as you know, and has won quite a bit of media scrutiny for himself and also a couple of enemies as well. I'm joined now by Gabe Sherman. He's just out with a Murdoch profile in New York Magazine. Really a fascinating piece, Gabe. Great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so you've written a lot about media. You've written about media titans and turmoil at various media empires, as you could call them. Is the Murdoch empire really in disarray or becoming?
No, I think that's stating it too strongly. I think what's happening is you see a lot of pieces moving simultaneously. You have Rupert really trying to define the last phase of his legacy, and meanwhile you have his adult children who are really at the sort of prime of their careers, who are ready to take more control of the empire. So you sort of have those two forces working against each other. They're working against each other, and they're certainly not going to be resolved, as you say, until Rupert Murdoch says it's going to be resolved, right? So what did you find in your reporting? Well, I think the issue is that, you know, when Rupert bought the Wall Street Journal in 2007, there was a lot of speculation that this would become his so-called retirement project, and that would sort of define his last phase of his career, and that would create space for James and perhaps Lachlan and some of the other children to move back into positions of control. But what we've seen is Rupert has shown no signs of slowing down, and that sort of transitional moment that we thought would happen hasn't happened, and Rupert is really working to prove that he is still in control of the company. But why would anybody, I mean, I can see retirement project in the way that it might be one of his last big projects, right? Last big wars, and there's, you know, this Journal, New York Times war. But why would anybody think that that would slow him down? Because if anything, it would likely embolden him, right? Because he has wanted to take down the New York Times for decades. And this is one of the last great newspaper wars. Exactly. And you know, his obsession with the Journal is really, you know, it's striking inside the company. You know, Dow Jones is a minuscule part of News Corp's total revenue, and yet he put, you know, Dow Jones senior executives on the 8th floor executive suite at the News Corp headquarters. He spends a lot of his time in the Journal newsroom when he's in New York. And, you know, this company is a very small company, and yet Rupert, who could be spending, you know, his time dealing with 20th Century Fox and some of the television businesses that generate, you know, the bulk of News Corp's revenues, he's really focused on the Journal. What's going to be considered success for Rupert when he finally, you know, what is defined as success against the New York Times? That's a fascinating question. With the Times, I think it is really establishing the Journal as the preeminent national newspaper, agenda-setting newspaper of record, if you will. I mean, it already is in many respects. In the business world, it is. I think Rupert wants to take it much beyond the business world, and in the way that the New York Times drives the Washington agenda, the way the New York Times drives the cultural agenda in the country. But I think larger for News Corp, I think Rupert's mission is to define the media landscape on his terms. And so this whole notion that content has value, and the notion that new companies like Google and aggregators take old media's content and use it for their purposes, he wants to say, if you want to take our content, we have to be compensated for it, which would really undermine a lot of the new media's economics. Now, you write in your article how, you know, this whole flap with Roger Ailes and, you know, Matthew Freud making those comments, eventually all of his kids got in line behind that, though, and, you know, everybody pretty much got back in line. You know, being that Rupert still has such a big hand on that, you didn't get to talk to him for this article. No, I did not. The kids didn't talk to you. No. You get any sense that them not talking to you had anything to do with Rupert? Well, I think this is always an issue with News Corp because it is fundamentally a family company. And so you have this giant global public company, but within it you have this very intimate personal family. And so they are very sensitive to having their personal family matters aired in public. And yet, since it is intertwined with a giant global public company, it is material to understanding this business. And so there's that tension where the family often doesn't want to talk about what's going on within the family, and yet for reporters who cover News Corp, it's fundamental to understanding what's going on inside the company. And so I think that's probably why they didn't want to cooperate on the family issues. Right. Okay, Gabe, we'll have to leave it there, but good to talk with you. Fascinating read again. Gabe Sherman, contributing editor for New York Magazine.